News First, NEWSLINE with Faraz Shauketaly.
And a very good evening to you. This is NEWSLINE Live at yet another new timing, this time hopefully for a few more days yet and weeks even. At 8:30 to 9 is the new timing, 8:55 actually. This evening though, we have got a guest who hasn't been around for a while. We wonder why, but he's right here with us, a journalist of some repute and sometimes even a poet. He's right here, Mr. Malinda Selviratna. Very good evening to you, Malinda.
Good evening. You always describe me as a poet. Remind me of this movie called Bobby, where this beautiful Hindi song, Shayad to nahi, I am no poet. That's not what I do.
All right, but somebody described you as a poet.
Yeah, that's one of the small things that I do.
Indeed. Now then, amongst the main things that you do as a journalist, how do you react to the announcement that curfew has been all but lifted, in the sense that it's being lifted from 4 a.m. till 10 p.m.
Yes.
All island?
Yeah. Well, at some point we need to get back to some semblance of normalcy.
Yeah.
And we need to keep in mind also that this is a process. We had complete curfew for many weeks.
Yeah.
Intermittent lifting of curfew, and now we are moving to less restrictions.
Yeah.
So that is a process, I think, where we have slowly opened out.
Right.
And I think that is important, and because everyone will say that there are people who say you can't keep shut down. You can't shut down shop forever. You have to get back to business.
Indeed.
And at the same time, we need to keep in mind that after 2 months of these restrictions, we can expect society to be ready for this kind of opening, because you are now used to, there's a culture of keeping social distance, there's a culture of wearing masks, and taking the basic, following the basic protection protocols. So I think that maybe we are ready for that kind of thing. But having said that, the onus is now on the individual.
Right.
We have to be very responsible, and also the heads of institutions. People are going to work.
Yeah.
Every organization is different, and there are different categories of employees. And so their tasks are different, so you can't have the same protocols for everyone. You can't have a blanket, common to all kinds of things.
So it's fair to say that a fair chunk of the onus on care is now being shifted away from the government to the rest of the sectors.
Yeah, because the government can't, no government can monitor each and every individual in a situation where there is no curfew, where there are no restrictions from 5 to 10.
Yeah.
That's a long period of time.
Yeah.
We just don't have the resources. No government on earth can do that, or has ever done that ever.
Right.
So the onus is, yes, it is our responsibility to take necessary precautions.
Right. And okay, on the one side we need it because we need to get our economy restarted, if you like.
Yes, we have to also think about economy in a different kind of way.
Yeah.
But that's a larger theoretical, philosophical question. But how we are going to do business after this? Business not in the sense of trade, but how to operate, how to imagine our existence as a species, and how we relate to one another.
But last week I was visiting on some work. I was in Hatton, where they didn't have on that day, there was no curfew during the day there, and I was observing the people from the safety of my car, and I noticed, I couldn't but help notice that people were not paying any form of attention to social distancing. I saw, in particular, I saw a pharmacy that was jam-packed with people. I saw a grocery store, the same. the wholesale, the small grocers. So I don't mean a department, a supermarket.
So there are concerns raised about a second wave.
Yeah.
But let's not forget that we have not had any infections reported from society for 25 days now.
Other than the known clusters.
Other than the known clusters, the quarantine centers and so on.
Yeah.
So, and I am sure, or at least let us hope, that the health authorities know what they are doing, and the advice has been informed by adequate and rigorous research about what the situation is out there.
What are the chances that such adequate research?
That, of course, for us, it's hard to speculate. We should not speculate.
True. As responsible.
One of the main reasons is neither you nor I, most of the people who talk about these things are virologists or experts on epidemics.
And in any case, this is a global phenomenon. Nobody in the world really knows.
We are all in trial and error mode. The WHO initially said there's no human-to-human transmission possible.
Yeah.
Then they changed that. Then at one point they said face masks are not necessary. Later they said yes. Then they said, cremation of victims, the victims could be buried.
Yeah.
Then they found that cadavers were infecting, people in the funeral parlors.
Yeah.
So the entire world is in trial and error mode. What we know today, we didn't know yesterday.
Yeah.
What we know today might prove to be idiotic or nonsensical tomorrow.
Right.
But then we have had 2 months of engagement, very intense engagement with the pandemic, and all kinds of information has come in about countries that have managed to deal with it more effectively than others.
Right.
So there is a knowledge curve also that is apparent. So let's see how it works. Let's hope that we are not moving into a disaster.
Yeah.
But then again, in the end, it's our business, our lives. And if we don't have the discipline and the sense of civic responsibility to act in a particular kind of way, then we should not, we deny ourselves the right of complaining.
Do you believe, as citizen Sri Lanka, do you believe that, are you happy with the steps taken thus far? Are you happy with what seems to be?
So I think that for us, we have to, our happiness has to be based on some kind of factual evidence.
Yeah.
Now we have, on the one side, we have not had as much of testing as is ideal, right? So we really don't know on that side. On the other hand, the information that we have indicates that there is containment. And apart from the horrible mistake of exposing our front line, which is the health workers and the security forces to infection, which actually some 600 Navy personnel are infected. You take that away and we are down to about 670.
But isn't that a spectacular mismanagement?
That was the early days of the pandemic. People were making all kinds of mistakes.
But you say that, but we stop at various checkpoints and so on, and quite often it's manned by policemen. I haven't read anywhere or reported even that any of these policemen have got infected.
Well, we are stopped. We usually show our curfew pass through a closed window, and we are all wearing masks.
Yeah.
That is different from the early days. I suppose there were no masks available also.
Yeah.
And we had Italy, Spain, and the United States reading the whole situation all wrong, making glaring mistakes. But if that had not happened, maybe we would have more recoveries than infections.
Right.
But that happened, and they have taken corrective measures, which we need to applaud, which is how it should be. I mean, we are not perfect. No one is perfect, and mistakes are bound to happen. Glaring mistake, this, and it would have been nice if it had been avoided, but it happened. So what?
Now then, on Newsline Live, as always, we encourage you to send us your questions by SMS, please, 0772 300 305. You ought to really be getting a card up on your screen, but the number is 0772 300 305 for your questions, please. Kindly don't phone the number. Now then, the next topic is something called democracy, and something that goes hand in glove with that, the whole notion of democracy, which is free and fair elections. Now, what about that?
When you say hand in glove, for us it sounds fishy. And this is also fishy. You know, in our country we have a bad political culture. The entire democratic system has been scarred by what Democrats do.
Right.
But the matter is now in courts. Right now, essentially it is about the holding of elections.
Right.
Given the COVID-19 pandemic,
Yeah.
and the situation that has generated.
Yeah.
And I think the court will decide, and we should not presume anything about the verdict.
Yeah.
But we have had the petitioners citing COVID-19 as an extraordinary situation.
But they have not provided any sort of scientific evidence to say that because of COVID-19 you can't have the elections.
Well, they said that because of COVID-19 Parliament should not have been dissolved. Right? But if you take that logic a little further, if the dates of the 2015 elections
Yeah.
were earlier than August 2015,
Yeah.
we might have had to have elections in March, and postponing it would have been inevitable given the situation that was unfolding. Then what would they have to say about Article 70, within brackets 5, 70
Yes.
stroke 5 for easy reference, about Parliament should not, Parliament has to sit, can't go 3 months without
More than
sitting.
3 months, yeah.
Right. So, but then when they say it's an extraordinary situation, then there are extraordinary
Which of course
measures.
COVID-19 is.
Yes, and you cannot make constitutions, you cannot make laws that account for all possible scenarios.
Indeed.
No one anticipated COVID-19.
Yeah.
So what do you do in a situation like that? Well, there is precedence. You have the doctrine of necessity,
Yeah.
which can be abused and has been abused. But that's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is constitutional exceptions.
Yeah.
These are exceptional circumstances. And we have a situation where recalling Parliament is at the discretion of the President. You can't arbitrarily remove that provision from the Constitution. So the President, in his wisdom, if he so decides not to recall the Gazette notification dissolving Parliament, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
You can't. You can't force him to do it. So then there's the other issue about the question of legitimacy. Leaving aside the legality of it, this Parliament, which has a composition which is not reflected in the in society, in the voter preferences.
You are alluding to the defeat of the government of the day at the provincial
Twice
councils.
at the local government elections, February 10, 2018,
Yes.
and in November 2019, the presidential election, where the party or the political formation that has a majority in Parliament today was wiped out essentially. In 2019 November, there was a massive defeat.
Yeah.
So then you can't have an illegitimate set of representatives.
Let's discuss this just after this break. You're tuned into NEWSLINE Live, and we're going for a break. See you on the other side.
Shauketaly.
And welcome back to NEWSLINE Live. And we're in conversation with Mr. Malinda Seneviratne, journalist. Now then, that was interesting what you're saying, that we can't have an illegitimate process.
Yeah, because it's all democracy is about representation. That's fundamental.
Yeah.
These are no longer legitimate representatives of public will, of citizens' will. So you can't reconvene parliament. There is an issue of practicalities of holding elections.
Yeah.
I think the elections commissioner had said he needs 70 days after the go-ahead, the green light being given by health authorities.
Yeah.
But I think that you can be creative about how you hold elections. In this country, on I think 5 or 6 occasions, elections have been held on a staggered basis,
Yeah.
general elections, where you have it over 7 days, 11 days, 5 days, 4 days. You can have it district-wise. You can have certain electorates in every district on a particular day, other electorates on another day. You can have it in such a way that your resources will not be overstressed, where you can deploy your resources to meet the conditions created by the pandemic. That is one element of the doability of it. And if we can open up things for the economy to go, for economic activity to take place, why can't we have political activity as well, such as holding an election? Now, of course, you can't do door-to-door canvassing. There will be issues, but there are. I mean, we are living in the 21st century. We are having Zoom meetings. Executives are having board meetings on Zoom.
But that's a little bit different from voting, where there's a lot of contact, where so many officers in the room where you go to vote and so on, and the process. I'm told that they are considering a spray system for your.
Well, you can have like where I live in Kotta, Kudamaduwa.
Yeah.
We vote at the local temple.
Yeah.
There's a considerably large hall, and the officials before COVID-19 were all spread out. You can you can. I
But that
suppose,
contrasts with where I vote, and that is in a classroom, and all of the officers are much closer than you and I are today in the studio.
right.
And they you hand your thing in, they check it, the next person says something else, and so on, and then you've got to have your finger painted.
Right. So elections commission, they get paid by the taxpayers' money to come up with solutions to that kind of situation. And if you are creative, and if you are competent, if you know what the situation is, you can circumvent those kinds of issues. I'm sure there's a way. You can't say just because in Faraz Shauketaly's electorate.
No, I don't mean that the whole country revolves around my vote.
Yeah, but that's an issue, which they can.
There are many others in the same situation as I am.
But then I'm sure they can have creative solutions, distancing and so on. But let's see, if they say we can't, then we have to take their word for it.
Yeah.
But the objection has been from, I think, 3 divisional secretaries.
My fear is that all these systems, because we have a history of politicizing everything, including the handing over of Samurdhi monies. So, when in a background, in an ambience of that, then are we serious to believe that this is what's going to happen?
Now we are seeing objections about Parliament not sitting. Now we can't, what is worse? Parliament not sitting or elections not being held? Are we going to go indefinitely without elections? Are we going to have the technology or go for a different kind of technological
Why can't
solution?
they allow the president to continue, as he is the only legally mandated person right now, to govern, and have elections when we are all certain that we would like to see a time when the clusters or non-clusters numbers are down and so on, and that will instill some greater confidence.
Right now, those who support Gotabaya Rajapaksa president and who believe he's doing a good job so far would not be unhappy with that. But there is a reason why our constitution has provisions for a parliament.
But there are. You spoke about the doctrine of necessity, and earlier you mentioned constitutional exceptionalism.
Yes, but suspending deadlines for these things arbitrarily, I don't think that's a good, that creates a good or healthy precedent in a democracy. Right now we can say...
But if democracy is the ultimate goal, surely we must expend everything possible to ensure a free and fair election at the end of the day. Not return to a situation in the past when people with 10 votes became members of parliament.
Yes, so okay, we have a ground reality which is not a very happy kind of reality.
Yeah.
We have measures that have been taken to alleviate certain issues.
Yeah.
We are learning about how to manage, how to deal with the various constraints that are clearly apparent.
Yeah.
And elections,
Yeah.
commission also has a job to do, and I think that just because Gotabaya Rajapaksa is the only real elected executive that we have at this point.
These are exceptional times.
These are exceptional times, but are we going to use that exceptional times in whichever way we like? Because then it can be abused at some later point by someone who just defines the situation as exceptional, and we have to bite because the authority is saying it. So
right.
I think that we have to think about the repercussions of suspending things indefinitely, and I think the court in its wisdom will take such things into account when making determinations on the petitions that's before the court right now.
Where do you think we'll have the result?
I think that the petitioners have made their submissions. Those who are opposing have made their submissions. I think that process is. I think the petitioners get another. I'm not an expert on legal matters, but
no.
I think the petitioners have a right of response through submissions, written submissions, and then the court will take some time to peruse all these documents and then make a determination on what is the just and legal constitutional way of moving forward.
It says here, look at how Europe conducts elections. We can do the same. Disadvantages will be the same for all, so we will have a level playing field.
Yeah, so we are not like in the dark ages. Our technology is not like 100, 200 years behind that of so-called developed countries. South Korea had an election recently, and
around 27% of the people voted offline. I mean, not in person.
Right. So I think all kinds of accommodations can be made, but that's up to the Elections Commission.
Right. Now, what is the role of the medical officers? We had the Director General of, or the Director of National Health Service, Dr. Anil Jasinger, clarifying what he said. He said he only said that the electoral process can go on. That is from a medical point of view. So
we have to take their word for it, because you and I are not experts on this subject.
Yeah.
And if
but that was sort of construed as an endorsement, but he's clarified it since then.
Yes. So let's see what the court. The court will decide on all the submissions, including the opinions of the experts,
right,
in all this. But we have a very strange situation for us, which I must mention.
Yeah.
We have people swearing in the name of democracy, who are terrified of having elections. I mean, the same people who want elections postponed because of the COVID-19. Postpone provincial council elections. We don't have provincial council. It's like the 13th Amendment doesn't exist and no one is worried about it. It's another issue. And then we have an elections commission, which in their wisdom says we can't have elections for a certain number of days, which could be very, drawing from a very consideration of practicalities, which I'm willing to go with.
Which is completely different from the time they didn't have provincial council elections,
yes,
because that was obviously because out of sheer fright.
Sheer fright, and that is the problem. When people, I call them born-again democrats. They become democrats, and democracy becomes something divine when the political coalitions or parties that they support are in a bad way, right?
I'm reminded when you say that about the role of one Mahinda Rajapaksa in all those years ago, when he and Vasudeva Nanayakkara went off to Geneva and were the champions of human rights, only to change the colors when he became the president, to the great dismay of human rights campaigners.
My father once gave a T-shirt which had this line, politicians are full of promises, right? They're promising. And when it suits them, you know the story, the parable of the Khabaragoya and the Talagoya, right? When it suits you, you turn the Khabaragoya into a Talagoya, but you don't eat Khabaragoyas because they eat carrion, right? I'm not a meat eater or fish eater, but anyway, for those who are, when it suits them, and that is, I mean, Mahinda Rajapaksa is not the only politician that we have, and we live in a country.
That was just an example of what you were speaking of earlier.
Yeah, and but also, I mean, when I say he's not the only politician, what I'm saying is we don't have statesmen.
Right.
Right?
Yes, that's there is a rather more than a subtle difference between politicians and statesmen. I think what the need of the hour in this country right now is to have statesmen and statesman-like action, because at the end of the day, it is the people that we all serve. That's the bottom line. Malinda Seneviratne, thank you very much for your presence here. I'm sorry that you couldn't become more poetic this evening, but maybe on one of our other programs you can.
But this is a current affairs program, and poetry doesn't have that much currency among the entire spectrum of your viewing population, so let's leave it to something else.
Absolutely, and that's the way it was on NEWSLINE Live. Thank you very much for tuning in. Do note the new times from 8:30 to 8:55, Monday through to Friday. Thank you, take care, have a great evening ahead of you, and a wonderful week, in fact, ahead of you as well. And as always, I leave you with this message. God bless.